Caleb Johnson accepted the job for one night only. No questions asked, no expectations given. Somewhere across the city, in a high-rise apartment that cost more than he would earn in a decade, Victoria Lane waited for a stranger, simply because she could not bear to be alone. Caleb walked through the world with the careful awareness of a black man who had long grown accustomed to being judged before he was ever understood. Back home, his daughter Nia had fallen asleep earlier than usual, her small body curled beneath a blanket covered in cartoon stars. Neither of them knew that this single night would cut straight through to the deepest assumptions they each carried inside. The booking came through the app at 7:43 in the evening. Victoria had typed her requirements with the precision of someone accustomed to controlling every variable in her life. 4 hours of companionship, no physical contact beyond what she initiated. Conversation preferred but not mandatory. A hotel suite address followed, along with a payment offer that made Caleb set his phone down and stare at the ceiling for a full minute before picking it back up. He sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, the one with the uneven leg he kept meaning to fix, and did the math he always did. Rent was due in 9 days. Nia needed new shoes because she had outgrown the last pair faster than he had anticipated. The after-school program had raised its fees again, and the gap between what he earned driving rideshare and what life demanded grew wider every month. He had started doing companion work 6 months ago, after a friend mentioned it as a way to supplement income. Most bookings were straightforward. Dinner companions for business events, someone to accompany a nervous traveler to the airport. Occasionally, someone who simply wanted another human being present while they ate room service and watched television. He had rules. No drugs, no illegal activity, no situations that felt wrong in his gut. So far, those rules had kept him safe. He read Victoria's message again. Her tone was clipped, almost clinical. She had not asked a single personal question about him, which was unusual. Most clients wanted some reassurance that he was not dangerous, that he could hold a conversation, that he would not embarrass them. This woman seemed to assume competence, or perhaps did not care either way. The address she provided was in the Langford building downtown, one of those glass towers that seemed to exist in a different city than the one where Caleb paid for parking meters and waited in line at the grocery store. He had driven past it dozens of times without ever imagining he might walk through its lobby. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. He typed a response, confirming availability, then deleted it. Typed it again with different wording. What he wanted to say was that he had questions too, that he was not a service to be ordered like takeout, that the transaction she was proposing carried weight she might not recognize. What he actually sent was brief and professional. Available tonight. Will arrive at 9. Please confirm dress code and any additional expectations. Her reply came within seconds. Business casual. No additional expectations. She did not even sign her name. Caleb walked down the narrow hallway to Nia's room. She was 7 years old and already developing the habit of sleeping with one arm thrown over her eyes, the same way her mother used to sleep. He stood in the doorway and watched the rise and fall of her breathing. This small person who depended on him completely, who trusted that he would always come back, who did not yet understand how much of the world was designed to make that promise difficult to keep. He took out his phone and recorded a voice memo, something he did whenever he left her with the elderly neighbor downstairs who watched her on short notice. "Hey baby girl," he said softly into the microphone. "Daddy has to work tonight, but I will be home before you wake up. Mrs. Patterson is right downstairs if you need anything. I love you more than all the stars, okay? More than all the stars and all the skies and all the universes. Sleep good." He saved the memo and forwarded it to Mrs. Patterson's phone as backup. Then he changed into dark slacks and a button-down shirt, checked his reflection without vanity, and walked out into the night. The Langford building rose 42 stories into the Chicago skyline, its glass facade reflecting the city lights like a mirror turned toward the heavens. Caleb approached the entrance with the measured calm he had learned to project in spaces where his presence might be questioned. The lobby was marble and brass, softly lit, designed to communicate wealth through understatement. A security guard sat behind a curved desk, his eyes tracking Caleb from the moment he pushed through the revolving door. "Good evening," Caleb said, stopping at a respectful distance from the desk. "I am here to see a guest in Unit 3712. The guard was a white man in his 50s, heavy-set, with the kind of suspicious squint that suggested he viewed his job as the last line of defense against an invasion that never came. He looked Caleb up and down slowly, taking in the pressed shirt, the clean shoes, the hands held loosely at his sides in a posture that communicated nothing threatening. Name? Caleb Johnson. The guard typed something into his computer, then picked up a phone and dialed. He kept his eyes on Caleb the entire time, as though expecting him to bolt for the elevators at any moment. Caleb stood still and waited. He had done this before, in other buildings, in other contexts. The waiting was part of it. The being observed was part of it. The quiet humiliation of being treated as a potential threat in a place where he had been explicitly invited was so familiar that it barely registered anymore. "Got a Caleb Johnson here," the guard said into the phone. "Says he is visiting 3712. He listened for a moment, then hung up without saying goodbye. "She is expecting you. Elevators are to your left. Do not stop on any other floor." Caleb nodded and walked toward the elevators without responding. Behind him, he heard the guard mutter something to a colleague who had emerged from a back room. The words were too quiet to make out, but the tone carried. He pressed the elevator button and watched the numbers descend. The door to Unit 3712 opened before he could knock. Victoria Lane stood in the doorway, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than his monthly car payment. Her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, her face bare of makeup. She was younger than he had expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to be conducting an assessment of their own. "You are Caleb," she said. It was not a question. "I am. And you are?" She hesitated for just a fraction of a second, a pause so brief that most people would not have noticed it. "Victoria," she said. "Come in." The apartment was enormous by any standard, but especially by the standards of a man who slept on a pull-out couch so his daughter could have the only bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the lake, the water black and endless beneath the night sky. The furniture was minimal and expensive, the kind of design that prioritized clean lines over comfort. Caleb stood just inside the door and waited for direction. Victoria closed the door behind him and walked toward a sitting area near the windows. She moved like someone accustomed to being watched, each gesture controlled and deliberate. Caleb followed at a distance, his eyes cataloging the space not out of greed, but out of habit. He had learned long ago to notice exits, to map unfamiliar rooms, to never let himself be caught off guard. "The guard downstairs," Victoria said without turning around. "He gave you trouble. It was not a question." Caleb considered his response carefully. "He kept me longer than necessary," he said. "But I would not call it trouble. Trouble implies something unusual." Victoria turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "That happens to you often?" Caleb met her gaze directly. "Yes, it does." She seemed to absorb this information, filing it away somewhere behind those calculating eyes. Then she gestured toward the couch. "Please, sit. Can I offer you something to drink? Water? Wine? Water is fine." She poured 2 glasses from a pitcher that probably contained water, filtered through volcanic rock, or blessed by monks, or whatever rich people did to make hydration feel exclusive. She handed him one and settled into an armchair across from the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, her posture suggesting she was trying to appear more casual than she actually felt. "I should be clear about expectations," she said. "I booked you for companionship. That means conversation if I want it, silence if I need it, and absolutely no physical contact unless I explicitly initiate it. Is that understood?" "Understood," Caleb said. "And I will add my own clarity. You have the right to end this at any point for any reason. You do not need to explain, justify, or apologize. The door is right there." If anything I do makes you uncomfortable, you say stop, and I stop. No questions asked. Victoria blinked, apparently caught off guard by the directness. That is very clear, she said. I believe in being clear. Caleb took a sip of water. Also, you should know that I am a single father. I have a 7-year-old daughter at home. I mention this not for sympathy but for transparency. You are entitled to know who you have invited into your space. For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. She studied him with an intensity that might have made another man uncomfortable. But Caleb had grown accustomed to being studied. Finally, something in her posture softened, just slightly, like a door cracking open an inch. You are very careful, she said. I have to be. Because of your daughter? Caleb set his glass down on the table between them. Because of many things, he said. My daughter is one of them. Victoria nodded slowly. Something shifted in the room, some invisible barrier lowering by a fraction. She looked out at the lake, her reflection ghostly in the dark glass. I do not usually do this, she said quietly. Hire someone, I mean, for company. Caleb did not respond. He had learned that silence was often more valuable than words, that people revealed themselves in the spaces where they expected to be interrupted. Victoria turned back to him. You are not going to ask why. No. Why not? Because it is not my business. Caleb leaned back against the couch cushions. You hired me for companionship, not interrogation. If you want to tell me why, you can. If you do not, that is fine too. Victoria's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. You are not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? She considered the question. Someone who would try harder to impress me, she said finally. Someone who would fill the silence with small talk. Someone who would look at this apartment and ask questions about the view, or the furniture, or how much it all cost. Caleb glanced around the room with deliberate casualness. It is a nice apartment, he said. The view is impressive. The furniture looks uncomfortable, and I assume it cost more than I will earn in the next several years combined. Any other observations you need? Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. No, she said. I think that covers it. The hours passed differently than either of them had anticipated. They talked, sometimes, about nothing consequential. The weather. A documentary Victoria had watched about ocean currents. A book Caleb was reading to Nia about a girl who befriended a dragon. They sat in silence too, long stretches where neither felt compelled to fill the space with noise. Victoria ordered food from somewhere that delivered at midnight, and they ate from elegant containers that Caleb suspected cost extra simply because they were biodegradable. At some point, his phone buzzed with a photo from Mrs. Patterson. Nia, still asleep, one arm thrown over her eyes. Victoria noticed him looking at the screen. Is that your daughter? Caleb showed her the photo without hesitation. Nia, he said, she is the reason I do any of this. Victoria studied the image with an expression Caleb could not quite identify. She looks peaceful, she said. She is 7. 7-year-olds do not know yet how unpeaceful the world can be. Caleb put the phone away. I am trying to keep it that way for as long as possible. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she asked something that shifted the entire temperature of the room. What is it like? She asked. Being black in America. The real answer. Not the polite one. Caleb looked at her for a long time before responding. The question itself carried a certain weight, the weight of someone who had never needed to ask, because the answer had never affected her daily existence. He recognized the privilege in the curiosity, the luxury of treating his lived experience as an intellectual exercise, but he also recognized something else beneath it, a genuine desire to understand, however clumsy the approach. You want to know what it is like, he said slowly. It is like walking through a world that was not designed for you and being constantly reminded of that fact. It is being followed in stores by security guards who think you do not notice. It is being pulled over for driving a nice car because someone assumed it must be stolen. It is watching your daughter play in a park and wondering if the other parents see a child or a threat. It is code switching so constantly that you sometimes forget what your real voice sounds like. It is exhausting. And the most exhausting part is that the exhaustion is invisible to people who have never experienced it. Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then she said, quietly, "I have never had to think about any of that." "I know," Caleb said. "That is what privilege is, not having to think about it." Something flickered across Victoria's face, an emotion Caleb could not quite name. Discomfort, maybe, or recognition. "I hired you," she said, "because I wanted someone to be present without wanting anything from me. No agenda, no expectations, just presence." Caleb nodded. "And have I delivered that?" "Yes." Victoria looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. "But now I realize that you came here with your own weight, your own burdens, and I did not even consider that. I treated this like a transaction. Money for time. But it is not that simple, is it? Nothing is ever that simple." They sat with that truth between them, heavy and unresolved. Outside, the first hint of gray was beginning to lighten the horizon over the lake. The night was ending. He left before the sun fully rose. Victoria walked him to the door, but did not try to extend the goodbye beyond what was necessary. Caleb paused in the doorway and turned to look at her one last time. "Thank you," Victoria said, "for the honesty." Caleb nodded once. "Take care of yourself." He did not leave a number. He did not ask for hers. He did not suggest that they should do this again or that the night had meant anything beyond what it was. He simply walked to the elevator, rode down to the lobby, and nodded at the security guard who watched him leave with the same suspicion that had greeted his arrival. The drive home was quiet. The city was still asleep. The streets empty except for delivery trucks and early joggers, and the occasional taxi ferrying someone home from a night that had run too long. Caleb parked in his usual spot and sat in the car for a few minutes, letting the engine tick as it cooled, letting his mind process the strange hours that had just passed. Upstairs, Mrs. Patterson was dozing on the couch, the television playing an infomercial at low volume. She woke when Caleb came in and waved away his thanks with the ease of someone who had raised 4 children of her own and understood that parents sometimes needed to work at odd hours. He pressed some cash into her hand despite her protests and walked her to the door. Nia was still asleep, exactly as she had been in the photo. Caleb stood in her doorway and watched her breathe, this small, perfect person who depended on him for everything. He thought about Victoria in her glass tower, surrounded by luxury and empty space. He thought about the security guard and his suspicious eyes. He thought about all the ways the world divided itself into those who had to prove their safety and those who assumed it by default. Then he closed the door softly and made himself a cup of coffee. And the day began. 3 weeks later, Caleb stood in a service corridor at the Chicago Cultural Center, wearing the black vest and white shirt of a catering company. The gala, happening on the other side of the door, was one of those events that existed in a universe parallel to his own, a gathering of philanthropists and executives and politicians who measured their worth in zeros and influence. He was here because the catering company paid well and worked around his schedule, and because Nia needed braces that insurance would not fully cover. The event coordinator snapped her fingers and pointed toward the main hall. "Champagne service," she said. "Smile but do not engage. Invisible but available." Caleb had perfected the art of being invisible but available long before he ever picked up a serving tray. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, offering glasses to hands that rarely acknowledged his face. The room was spectacular, all vaulted ceilings and stained glass, and the kind of architectural grandeur that reminded people they were special simply for being present. He heard her voice before he saw her, a voice he had listened to for 4 hours in a high-rise apartment, a voice that had asked him what it felt like to be black in America and then sat with the answer without trying to fix it. He turned, and there she was. Victoria stood on a small stage at the front of the room, speaking into a microphone with the confidence of someone who had addressed crowds like this 1,000 times before. She was wearing a gown that probably cost more than his car. Her hair swept up in an elegant arrangement, her face composed and commanding. Behind her, a projection screen displayed the logo of Meridian Capital Partners and the words Victoria Lane, CEO and founder. The champagne tray trembled slightly in his hands. She was not just wealthy. She was a billionaire. One of the most powerful women in finance. Her face had been on magazine covers that Caleb had glanced at in grocery store checkout lines without ever making the connection. She had sat in silk pajamas and asked him about his daughter and eaten takeout from biodegradable containers and wondered aloud why he was not trying harder to impress her. Victoria's eyes swept the room as she spoke about charitable initiatives and investment in underserved communities. And then her gaze landed on him. For a single frozen moment, they stared at each other across the crowded hall. Caleb saw the recognition flash across her face, the widening of her eyes, the slight falter in her voice before she recovered and continued her speech. He saw something else too. Guilt, maybe, or fear of being seen clearly for the first time. He set the tray down on the nearest surface and walked toward the service corridor. His hands were shaking, though he could not have said whether from anger or humiliation or something more complicated than either. Behind him, Victoria's amplified voice continued to speak about making a difference, about leveling playing fields, about the responsibility of those with resources to lift up those without. She found him in the corridor 20 minutes later, after her speech had ended and the applause had faded and the crowd had moved on to the next source of entertainment. She was alone, her heels clicking against the concrete floor, her expression uncertain in a way he had not seen before. "Caleb," she said. He leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, his server's vest suddenly feeling like a costume in a play he had not agreed to perform. "Victoria Lane," he said, CEO and founder of Meridian Capital, worth approximately $4 billion, according to Forbes. "Did I miss anything?" Victoria stopped a few feet away from him. "I can explain," she said. "Can you?" Caleb's voice was calm, but the calm was a thin membrane over something much more volatile. "Because from where I am standing, it looks like one of the richest women in America hired a black man to keep her company for a night, without mentioning that she could buy and sell his entire existence, without noticing the transaction. It was not like that. Then, tell me what it was like." Victoria took a breath that seemed to require effort. "I wanted one night," she said, "where I was not Victoria Lane, where no one knew my name or my net worth or my influence. I wanted to be seen as a person instead of a portfolio. Is that so difficult to understand?" Caleb pushed off the wall and took a step toward her. "For you? Maybe not. For me? The calculus is different." He gestured at his server's uniform. "You gotta play at being anonymous. I live anonymous. You gotta experience what it feels like to be unknown for a few hours. I experience what it feels like to be dismissed every single day. I did not dismiss you. You did not tell me the truth. I did not lie." Caleb laughed, a sound without humor. "You left out the fact that you run a company worth billions of dollars. You let me believe we were having some kind of equal exchange when the entire time you held all the cards. That is not honesty. That is just a different kind of deception." Victoria's composure cracked slightly, a fracture in the careful facade she had maintained for so long. "I was afraid," she said quietly. "Afraid that if you knew who I was, you would treat me differently. I would have." Caleb met her eyes directly. "Because you are different. Your existence operates on completely different rules than mine, and you do not get to pretend otherwise just because it is inconvenient." They stood in the empty corridor, the sounds of the gala muffled behind closed doors. Two people occupying the same space while living in entirely separate worlds. Victoria opened her mouth as if to say something else, but Caleb shook his head. "Here is what you do not understand," he said. "When you experiment with anonymity, there are no real consequences. You go back to your penthouse and your billions and your magazine covers. But when I exist in spaces where I am not expected, when I stand in lobbies where security guards watch me like a threat, when I serve champagne to people who look through me like glass, those moments accumulate. They leave marks. You got to try on invisibility like a costume. I live inside it. Victoria's eyes glistened, but Caleb felt no impulse to comfort her. Some lessons needed to hurt. "I wanted to apologize," she said, "for not being honest. For the security guard that night, for all of it." "And what does your apology come with?" Caleb asked. "A donation? A job offer? Some way to make yourself feel better about the inequality between us?" She flinched as if he had struck her. "That is not fair." "Fair?" Caleb's voice rose slightly before he pulled it back under control. "You want to talk to me about fair? Nothing about this is fair. Not the gap between your life and mine. Not the fact that you can erase me from your story with a single phone call while I have to explain to my daughter why some people live in glass towers and we share a bathroom with roaches. There is no apology that fixes that. There is no check you can write that makes us equal. Then what do you want from me?" Caleb was silent for a long moment. "Honestly, I do not know. But I know what I do not want. I do not want to be your lesson about inequality. I do not want to be the story you tell at cocktail parties about the interesting night you had with a regular person. I do not want you to donate to some charity in my name and consider the scales balanced." He took a step back toward the service corridor. "I want you to sit with the discomfort of knowing that your entire life is built on a system that makes mine harder. And I want you to do something about it that has nothing to do with me." He turned and walked away. Victoria did not follow. The weeks that followed were quiet ones. Caleb went back to his routines, the rideshare driving and the companion bookings and the homework help and the bedtime stories. Nia's braces appointment came and went, and he made the payments in installments that stretched his budget thin, but not to breaking. He did not think about Victoria Lane often, or at least he tried not to. She existed in a different world, and the boundary between that world and his own felt more solid now, more defined by the clarity of their final conversation. Then the community center called. The Westside Youth Foundation had been struggling for years, operating on a shoestring budget in a building that needed repairs the organization could not afford. Caleb had volunteered there when Nia was younger, teaching basic car maintenance to teenagers who had never had anyone show them how to change their own oil. The center had closed 6 months ago due to funding shortfalls, and Caleb had mourned its loss the way you mourn the death of a dream that was never quite realized. "Mr. Johnson," the voice on the phone said, "I am calling to let you know that the center has received a substantial anonymous donation. We are reopening next month and expanding our programming. We would love to have you back as a volunteer instructor if you are interested." Caleb stood in his kitchen with the phone pressed to his ear, looking out the window at the street where he had grown up. "How substantial?" he asked. The voice hesitated. "Let me just say that we will not have funding concerns for a very long time." After he hung up, Caleb sat down at the kitchen table and stayed there for a while, thinking. He did not know for certain that Victoria was behind the donation. Anonymous meant anonymous, but he knew the timing. He knew the amount of money that would be required to transform a struggling community center into something sustainable, and he knew that she had been listening. That night in the corridor, even when it seemed like she had not heard anything at all. It was not an apology. It was not a solution. It was just a small shift in a massive system, a single gear turning in a direction that might eventually turn others. Caleb did not know if it was enough. He suspected that nothing would ever be enough. Not really. But it was something. He picked Nia up from school that afternoon and drove her to the park where they always went, the one with the swings that squeaked and the slide that was too hot in summer. She ran toward the playground with the boundless energy of childhood, and Caleb sat on a bench and watched her, this small, perfect person who carried all his hopes in her tiny hands. He was still sitting there when a woman approached from the parking lot. She was dressed simply, jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different without the gown and the stage lights and the weight of her public identity. She looked almost ordinary. Victoria stopped a few feet from the bench. "I was not sure you would be here," she said. "How did you know to look?" "I did not." She glanced at Nia on the swings. "I have been coming to this park for the past 3 days, hoping." Caleb considered this. "That is either dedicated or disturbing. Probably both." She hesitated. "May I sit?" He moved over slightly on the bench, making room. Victoria sat down, leaving a careful distance between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just watched Nia swing higher and higher, her laughter carrying across the grass. "The community center," Caleb said finally. "I do not know what you are talking about." He looked at her sideways. "Right." Victoria kept her eyes on the playground. "I did not do it for you," she said quietly. "I did it because you were right. I have been sitting in that discomfort you talked about. It is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. No." She finally turned to face him. "I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Is there any version of this where we could start over? Not as a transaction, not as a lesson, just as two people trying to understand each other." Caleb thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the security guard and the glass tower and the gala where he had served champagne to people who never saw his face. He thought about the corridor and the anger and the truth he had spoken that could not be unspoken. But he also thought about the night before all of that, the hours of conversation and silence. The way she had asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He thought about the fact that she was sitting on a park bench in a neighborhood she had probably never visited before, waiting for a chance she had no right to expect. "I do not know," he said honestly. "There is a lot of distance between your world and mine. I am not sure it can be crossed." Victoria nodded slowly. "But you are willing to try?" Caleb watched his daughter pump her legs on the swing, reaching for a sky she could not touch, but never stopped trying. "I am willing to talk," he said. "That is all I can offer right now. One honest conversation at a time, with no games and no secrets and no pretending we are equal when we are not." "That sounds fair," Victoria said. "It is not fair," Caleb corrected her. "Nothing about this is fair, but it is a start." They sat together on the bench as the afternoon light softened and Nia's laughter echoed across the park. Nothing was resolved. Nothing was forgiven, but something had shifted, some small opening in the wall between their worlds, and for now, that was enough. The beginning of something that might become trust, built slowly, one honest word at a time.